Chairman Stile, Ranking Member Morelli, and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify on Congress's role in a post-Chevron world. My name is Wayne Cruz. I'm the Fred L. Smith Fellow in Regulatory Studies at the Competitive Enterprise Institute. Federal spending hogs the spotlight, but the hidden tax of regulation affects every aspect of our lives. The Code of Federal Regulations tops 188,000 pages. Last year alone, agencies issued 3,000 rules compared to just 65 laws passed by Congress. Costs remain unaccounted for, notably those from independent agencies now ascendant in whole-of-government pursuits like net zero energy, AI, equity, and competition policy. Congress must reclaim its lawmaking authority from the executive branch, but first and foremost, it must restrain its own interventionist appetites. There are many elements to this in my written remarks, but they all require that Congress, and this committee in particular, marshal appropriate resources and personnel to perform rigorous regulatory oversight and disclosures, replacing the eroded White House variant. The end of Chevron deference marks an overdue reaffirmation of separation of powers and a break on overdelegation. However, it's crucial to recognize the extent to which regulatory advocates will mobilize in response. While extraordinary extensions of regulatory power occurred during Chevron's reign, most of the leverageable administrative apparatus was erected before then. Especially since COVID, the problem is less about agency interpretation of the ambiguous statutes at hand in LOPR than agencies' implementation of unambiguous statutes. The inflation, infrastructure, and CHIPS laws are exceedingly regulatory even before administrators pick up a pencil. Workarounds exist for regulatory advocates to exploit in a post-Chevron world, including 1, more coordination on potent, unambiguous, and purpose-driven legislation like the CARES Act and the TikTok ban. 2, seducing the private sector with subsidies, grants, and partnerships to embrace interventionist legislation and cartelization. 3, increasing federal influence with hundreds of billions in procurement and contracting. And 4, replacing notice and comment rules with guidance documents and other forms of regulatory dark matter. To prepare, an outstanding but neglected new GAO report provides recommendations that this committee should heed, up to and including establishing a Congressional Office of Regulatory Analysis. Done correctly, a CORA could challenge mistaken presumptions of agency expertise and avoid the faulty presumption that market failure outweighs political failure. To reinforce GAO, other needed steps include overturning Biden's rewrite of OMB's Circular A4 and ensuring that regulatory reform laws already in effect but disregarded get enforced. Next comes the pursuit of several new legislative reforms. 1, passing the REINS Act, ideally under its predecessor's superior name, the Congressional Responsibility Act. 2, taking up the Democrats on their marvelous regulatory budgeting idea. 3, creating a regulatory reduction commission. 4, reinstating one-in, one-out policies and sunsetting regulations. 5th, and most importantly, reforms in the use of agency sub-regulatory guidance documents, including banning them. 6th, the low-hanging fruit should be the annual regulatory reporting in the style of the federal budget's historical tables. A generation ago, a slate of regulatory reforms benefiting state and local government, small business, and consumers passed with overwhelming bipartisan support. But today's fusion of hyperspending and regulation, government steers while the market merely rose, as our founder Fred Smith puts it. Cost of intervention compound even without writing notice and comment rules. Correcting overdelegation is vital, but the real challenge is Congress's own disregard for enumerated powers. Response requires decentralizations, federalism, and ending the abuse of crises like happened with COVID and the financial meltdown. By enhancing resources and fostering reforms, this committee could play a key role in limiting overregulation and expanding jobs and wealth. You don't need to tell the grass to grow, you just have to take the rocks off of it. Thank you again, and I'm happy to answer your questions.